Mobs that killed the most players, 36k. Now, we're looking at mobs here that have killed the most players over the history of WoW. Right now, a lot of people have been bitching about the new world boss in Karazhan, and now that thing is just wiping people out, and the whole fight's completely bugged. That's a whole different story. But these are some of the most historic player killers ever put in the game. Let's see from Necro War what's going on here.
Warcraft is home to thousands of various mobs and hundreds of bosses in dungeons and raids. Many of these adversaries are often quite unremarkable. Players rarely remember them, and encounters typically pose very little threat. However, some particular creatures, at specific points in Warcraft's history, manage to become literally the most deadliest foes in the entire game. In this video, I want to talk about the mobs, bosses, and even trash packs that have claimed more lives and nerves than most players would like to admit. The old official Warcraft website was an interesting...
Man, by the way, what the hell? I mean, I'm looking at this screen. What did we used to play in 560p? What was the resolution of those big tube monitors that we used to play on when WoW first came out? Is it 560p? I think, because I remember 720 when it came out was like kind of a big deal. And then obviously 1080 was like the HD revolution. What the hell was this shit? Yeah, I think it was like 5 something, right? Yeah. Probably, man, this shit, I don't know how we play. This shit hurts my eyes. I mean, obviously, this is more blurry than it would have been back then, but still, damn.
Was an interesting place. Among other things, it featured all kinds of statistics, including data on which mobs had killed the most players. That section has been offline for over 10 years now, and unfortunately, the web archive wasn't able to preserve the numerical data from it. All we have left are scattered forum mentions, rare reposts, and a handful of screenshots.
The fucking mage in this village killed me so many times. You know what I'm talking about. That mage would cast fucking pyroblasts and one-shot the shit out of everybody. There's a mage in this town. I don't know what he's Defias. Maybe he's Defias Caster or something. I don't know what the name is. I believe it was a male. Could have been a female. There might have been two. Used to beat the living shit out. Every single time I was in this village, I would get wrecked by that mage randomly. Just all of a sudden, the pyroblast comes out of the corner of your screen. You're dead.
Taken at different points in time. Let's make one thing clear up front. You've probably heard plenty of times that members of the Defias Brotherhood, Hogger, and the Alterac Valley bosses were among the deadliest mobs during vanilla WoW, so I won't focus on them.
I think that's him, that piece of shit.
Let's talk about some less obvious, yet surprisingly lethal mobs from other periods of the game. Let's go back to the early days of the Burning Crusade expansion. Players had just gained access to Outland and were facing a whole new lineup of enemies. For a brief but intense time, one of the deadliest mobs was High Lord Cruel, a massive demon who brought chaos to capital cities.
Well, because, people used to freaking kite him to capital cities. He was never meant to do this, but people sure did it.
He was part of a
pre-expansion event
that introduced the new content. The cities were engulfed in fire, and thousands of players fell during his large-scale assaults. But while it's easy to understand why an event boss like that, designed to wreak havoc across Azeroth, would rack up kills, one of the more unexpected entries in the old rankings, according to scattered forum mentions, was actually a warlock pet, the Felguard. Not because of his terrifying appearance.
I would totally think it was the Fel Reaver. Yeah, the Fel Reaver, you mentioned the Fel Reaver too. The Fel Reaver used to scare the shit out of me. Your whole screen would be shaking. You would hear that freaking Fel Reaver call out, that sound, that mechanical roar that it had. That thing was horrible, and it did kill me a couple times. But a random, I didn't know it was a random.
Or due to warlocks suddenly becoming wildly popular before the launch of the Burning Crusade, but because these pets were incredibly powerful when they were first introduced shortly before the expansion's release. It's also important to note that player pets were counted as mobs in those statistics.
Oh, okay.
Felguards were fearsome melee attackers, and when a warlock properly buffed and enhanced their Felguard, it could take down enemy players with little to no help. There are even rare clips showing empowered Felguards killing opponents while their owners barely lifted a finger. Of course, things weren't always that easy against skilled players. That time period was a transition between vanilla and the Burning Crusade.
Did Asmund do the Felguard trip? I mean, Asmund played a warrior back then, so I didn't know he even did this, but he killed the main person who would do the drag world boss. Oh, okay, dragging the world boss to the capital city. Yeah, I was gonna say he didn't play Warlock.
So balance issues were expected. Still,
well, he didn't even stream back then. By the way, he didn't. So I don't think he started streaming until BC.
Felguards were strong enough to be considered overpowered, and the developers knew it. In patch 2.03, they decided to nerf them by reducing their damage output. Let's transport ourselves back to the spring of 2007. Fortunately for us, some fascinating records of Warcraft's leading killers from that era have been preserved. Topping the charts were Voidwalkers, who managed to slay over 103,000 player characters in just a few days. The subsequent 3 spots were occupied by creatures from the same dungeon, Karazhan, which served as the first significant raid test for many players. The Maiden of Virtue was one of its bosses, where group positioning...
Karazhan was my first raid ever in the game. First time I ever did a raid in the game was Karazhan. Did I do Gruul's Lair before that? Maybe Gruul's Lair if you count that, but that was like a single boss. But the first like full-fledged raid I ever did was Karazhan. So yeah, I understand. Probably a lot of people that was their first raid. And your first time going in, there was not a lot of... We didn't have a ton of add-ons. There wasn't a ton of guides. You kind of just went in and figured it out. So yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of deaths to mobs in Karazhan. That makes sense.
Bosses, where group positioning, especially for healers, played a crucial role. This boss had several nasty abilities that required the group to spread out across the room. Standing too close to the boss inflicted damage in a small radius and prevented spellcasting. Beyond that, another troublesome ability was Repentance, which dealt damage and, more critically...
I also remember that, mind you, I was probably like 14 or 15 when we were doing this. I used to try to look up her skirt. I did. I'll admit it.
Stunned the entire raid for 12 seconds.
There's nothing there.
During this time, the tank could easily die without healers, leading to a full group wipe. To break free from the stun during Repentance, aside from simply waiting it out, players needed to take damage. There were several ways to achieve this. For instance, the tank could move the boss from the center of the room closer to a healer. Since the boss constantly dealt damage in a small radius, this could awaken the healer, allowing them to keep the tank alive while the rest of the group remained stunned. Alternatively, paladins could cast Blessing of Sacrifice, which would inflict a small amount of damage on the target, and again, awaken a stunned player. I'd hypothesize that this boss climbed so high in the rankings because groups often struggled with positioning and wiped frequently.
I did fuck up positioning on that guy many times. What did you play back then? Said DK's word out. I played Fire Mage. That was the tune that I used to... I played Fire Mage all the way up until BFA, pretty much. And then BFA, I really made DK my main. I dabbled in Death Knight before then, since Wrath, but really I stuck with my Fire Mage throughout it all.
Compared to other initial Karazhan bosses, the Maiden of Virtue alone
did you ever find the rap? No.
68,000 player deaths.
Unfortunately.
In second place was Moroes, another boss who managed to eliminate 36,000 characters within the tracked period.
Yeah, Moroes
also featured several challenging mechanics and was among...
I played, but I also played Hunter back then too for a while. So I switched to Mage in BC, but I played Hunter, and I remember the remote Moroes fight. I had to drop the Frost trap over and over and over to kite that little mob on the side until we were ready to kill him. That was a difficult thing, and people fucked it up all the time, and that caused a lot of wipes.
The first serious opponents...
Kiting was a real thing back then.
His most troublesome aspect was his rotating array of adds or helpers, which constantly interfered with raid progress. Players needed to control them and eliminate them as quickly as possible, because failing to do so would result in severe consequences from their abilities. Moroes himself could vanish and apply a bleeding debuff upon reappearing or blind raiders. Following Moroes in the rankings of early 2007's most dangerous foes was the trash located nearby, the Phantom Guests. These enemies appeared in groups and possessed various abilities. Some guests could apply DOT effects, others could heal, and still others inflicted unpleasant physical attacks. They were typically dealt with by being AoE.
I guess people kited them. I guess people pulled too many a lot of times.
They killed 35,000 characters, just slightly fewer than Moroes himself. This suggests they likely caused far more trouble for raiders than might have initially seemed apparent. Unfortunately, info on the most dangerous mobs during Wrath of the Lich King is scarce. Luckily, one player recorded a video in 2009 that briefly showed data from that section while covering the auction house. Perhaps the first thing to notice is that the Risen Ghoul was almost consistently at the top or near the top of the rankings on nearly all preserved...
I guess if it counts as a separate mob, yeah, that makes sense. And the Ghoul was pretty damn powerful back then too.
Here, the story is likely similar to the Felguard Pets of Warlocks,
like the Felguard
leading the charts on the eve of Burning Crusade. This means that...
Wait, does the Ghoul... Hold on. If they were on the eve of Burning Crusade, what if they were counting the whole Ghoul event? Remember the freaking Plague event that they did pre-Wrath of the Lich King? The pre-patch where like literally entire cities were dead for like 3 days? Just everyone was a ghoul running around? That was probably one of the most intense and wild pre-patch events, or pre-expansion events that Blizzard ever did. That was brave of them, because the game was essentially unplayable for like 2 or 3 days. It was. Like, you would log in and you just die. And then you ran around as a ghoul killing people because, yeah, fuck it, why not? But that was a crazy event. I wonder, this one says Risen Ghoul, so maybe a Risen Ghoul wasn't what you were as a player ghoul, but that was a fun time.
Even though they are technically player pets, the statistics are counted as
fun.
If they were regular mobs. Therefore, if a Death Knight was attacking someone, and their ghoul pet delivered the killing blow, that kill contributed to the overall statistics of the most dangerous creature.
I remember exploding the ghouls. Yes, Hate Spark. I do remember that. I remember you could run 5 Unholy DKs or a couple Unholies and a Frost, and do a 5-man dungeon. Just all Death Knights, no healers. Just all Death Knights. And I remember if you got enough ghouls, you could like basically one-shot some bosses in 5-mans by exploding all 5 ghouls. Yep, those were big deals back then.
According to class popularity statistics,
good
Death
study on
Knights
disease
were one
spreading.
of the most popular classes by the end of Wrath of the Lich King. So, I believe this also explains why ghouls ranked so highly. Since this data coincided with the active progression of the Ulduar raid, which had opened a few weeks prior, it's evident that many bosses and trash from this raid were among the most dangerous creatures in the top rankings. It's important to note that many players had trouble getting past the first few bosses, and for most, reaching the later ones on hard mode was just a dream. Let's briefly and generally go over the most noteworthy data. Flame Leviathan, the very first boss of Ulduar, had an unusual strategy that required players to use siege engines to deal damage and avoid direct confrontations with the boss. Over the 5 days for which we have available statistics, he killed 448,000.
It's just people couldn't figure out how to do the damn even we've done this in Time Walking and people still haven't figured it out. How to pick up the vials and shoot the things and do all the shit. This fight's just got like a bit of a complicated mechanics to it. And like if enough people aren't doing them, then you basically are it's a death wish. And you got to get on the vehicles and you got to make sure the motorcycles are doing the right shit. That's why people died of this fight so much.
Characters. Or, if we evenly distribute all kills over 5 days, it turns out he killed a little over 60 players
no one knows
every minute.
Yeah. Exactly.
XT002. Deconstructor, the second boss of the raid, killed at least 185,000 characters during this time, and Ignis the Furnace Master killed 145,000, though unfortunately, the full statistics for him aren't visible. Kologarn claimed 325,000 souls, and Hodir took 359,000. In general, to heavily generalize, players faced quite a challenge at each boss, but I think such data isn't unique at the launch of new raids. We just don't have statistics for other periods. Speaking of other dungeons, many souls were claimed by the Tempest minions found around the boss named Emelon the Stormwatcher in the Vault of Archavon raid. A unique feature of this raid was that it was accessible only to players who had captured the fortress on the Wintergrasp.
This was such a cool... I miss Wintergrasp, man. It was the best implementation of PvP ever. And some people will comment saying, what do you mean it was a lag fest? It was fucking horrible. Your screen rate was like 2 frames per second. But I loved it, man. I loved it. I loved the giant battle, the open world battle that it was. There were so many cool moments out of it. And then you would get the vault after, and you could go in and do the raid. That was so cool, man. Like, literally fight. And that was when faction lines mattered. Literally, if your faction couldn't win the war, you couldn't do the vault. It was loot locking you out. If they did that today, the forums would explode. Great job, Blizzard. Now I got a faction change so I can do the raid. People would bitch so much. But this was fun back then. And I remember my friend and I led 2 different raids into the vault on purpose so we could ninja loot the mammoth mount to each other. I do have the mammoth mount, and my friend ninja looted it to me, and then I raid led after and ninja looted it to him. That's right. Yep, we did that.
Opposing faction had to win the battle in order to regain control of the raid.
Because raid lead would distribute the
empower one
mount.
of these elementals with a charge that increased its damage and size. If an elemental accumulated too many charges, it would explode, dealing significant damage to the raid. Therefore, players had to focus their damage on that elemental after it was empowered. Although the elemental would respawn after death, it would no longer pose a major threat in its normal state. Over the course of 5 days, these elementals killed 385,000 player characters. Emelon himself killed 374,000 player characters.
I mean, it was really a tank and spank fight. A lot of people just freaking died just from not doing mechanics. You go in there and just blast that shit, and people would be dying all over the place. You evil degenerate. Yeah, you want to know what was really evil about it? We were hoping that people wouldn't catch us, so we'd actually let people roll. We'd let the entire raid roll on it, hoping that one of us, the friend would actually roll the highest one, and it wouldn't look like we were ninja looting it. Well, neither time did we roll the highest roll, and then we would just ninja loot leave raid right away. Ninja loot leave raid. So people rolled, they got excited when they won, and then they didn't get the mammoth.
During the same period, incidentally,
right.
players had already complained about this boss before, so the fight with Emelon was simplified in the past, and the developers reduced the elemental's health. Among the trash mobs, the living poison, a slime found in the revamped Naxxramas, also stood out. Normally, this mob could not be killed.
A lot of people.
The only option was to avoid it. If, for some reason, the slime reached
Can't
a
dodge
player, it would deal 30,000 damage. At that time, this was almost an instant kill for most players.
Yeah.
So, avoiding them was crucial. Despite this, the slimes managed to claim the souls of 34,000 player characters in just one day.
One day? What?
Loken, the Fallen Keeper corrupted by Yogg-Saron and drowned in an endless stream of lies, deserves special mention. He became a rather unpleasant opponent for players due to his tactics, which demanded precise character positioning during the fight. This mainly involved two abilities. The first deals periodic damage to players, with the damage increasing the farther a player is from the boss. As a result, party members had to stay close to Loken. The second ability was the exact opposite. Loken would cast a lightning attack dealing damage to everyone within a 20-meter radius. These two abilities turned the encounter into a frantic chase for inexperienced players, forcing them to constantly move closer to and away from the boss.
Yeah, see, mechanics like this, Blizzard can't do it because of weak auras today. Because everyone would do is download a weak aura that has a little map, and it turns green when you're in the proper position. So every time you'd run to the screen, then you'd stop, and you'd come back. That's why Blizzard is fighting against weak auras. Because they can't do shit like this anymore, because weak auras just freaking make it all they trivialize the shit out of all these mechanics. But yeah, this was a tough one back then.
Trying to minimize healing losses and damage output.
He was insanely tuned,
I would venture to say that this intricate and demanding dance of positioning became the primary block for many groups, and was the cause of countless wipes and much frustration expressed on the forums. According to available statistics from mid-December 2008, shortly after the expansion's launch, Loken killed 114,000 player characters. This is a very high number. For comparison, this is almost twice as many as Sapphiron, who was second on the kill leaderboard. There is even a curious incident where Ghostcrawler, the lead system designer of Warcraft, gave advice on one of the forum threads on how to fight Loken in heroic mode. Another honorable mention in the ranking of deadly creatures at a certain point in time was the Black Knight. Players reportedly first encountered this adversary in the early patches of the expansion, when a suspicious figure appeared at the Argent tournament. According to the game's lore, any rider who faced him was said to meet an untimely end. Players investigated the knight, who claimed to be a descendant of family from the Eastern Kingdoms. However, this story proved to be a fabrication. He was, in reality, a member of the Cult of the Damned. His mission was to
I never experienced this. That's crazy.
Hinder the defenders
of
Azeroth
had such
from
cool
holding
lore.
the tournament, to sabotage it, and to throw a wrench in their plans. At the end of the questline, players defeated the knight mounted on his steed. In patch 3.2, the Cult of the Damned resurrected the knight, and he became a boss in the Trial of the Champion dungeon.
That's right.
The exact number of players he killed is unknown, but according to an old comment preserved on Wowhead, he was in first.
I don't remember him. No, I just mindlessly did the quest and didn't realize that he was the same mob that had become a boss later on in the dungeon.
Place for total character kills at a certain point in late 2009.
I was just a kid.
The fight with him occurred in several
running through
phases.
the shit.
After players defeated the knight in the first phase, he would resurrect and begin summoning an army of ghouls. Although the ghouls themselves didn't have a large health pool, they were problematic due to an ability that caused them to explode, dealing significant damage to the group. Therefore, players needed to kill the ghouls as quickly as possible. Otherwise, the group would face a wipe and repeated attempts to defeat the Black Knight.
And your wife was in elementary school? No, there's 2 years between me and my wife. What the hell?
Closer to modern times, even in recent dungeons, at various points, creatures have appeared that became genuine nuisances and caused many deaths.
I mean, I guess if I was in I don't think I was in 6th grade. When Wrath came out, I was in high school. I was in high school in Wrath. When did Wrath come out? What year was it? 09 or 08? That would have been like my senior year of high school. Yeah.
While bosses are always expected to kill a lot, the situation with
trash mobs I would have been
less obvious. One of the most
junior or
notorious
senior
mobs of its time was Zul's Shadow from the King's Rest dungeon. It was essentially a mini-boss that groups had to defeat in order to progress. Although not a dungeon boss, it caused more than enough trouble, especially in high mythic keys. It dealt unpleasant, painful damage and had a large health pool. During certain affixes, like Fortified, which increased trash health and damage by 20%, fighting the Shadow could turn into a nightmare filled with numerous deaths, failed attempts, and group frustration. For example, in a 31 mythic key with this affix, players faced a battle with the Shadow that was a challenge in its own right. The mob had to be damaged for a long time, kited, and pulled far from its starting position to allow quicker returns after deaths. Players even had to die multiple times. In a way, this fight was as taxing as battling a full-fledged boss. Were there ways to avoid fate?
Well, yeah, I would imagine so at a 31 mythic key. Now, keys used to ramp up a lot less back then. Like, there wasn't a big difference with each key. So that was different, but I'm sure at 31 that shit was hard.
In the Shadow, yes. Demon hunters could literally jump onto a pillar
I was 19
by
in
exploiting textures and bypass the wall leading to the next room. Some other classes could do something similar,
Can I break down
but
that
not
UI?
as conveniently. Unfortunately, or fortunately, developers eventually nerfed this skip method. A similar situation applied to the seagulls in Eye of Ashara.
I hated those things. I hated these fucking things.
Moreover, if the team was coordinated and careful, they could...
You always pull the seagull out of fucking nowhere, and that thing would just peck the shit out of people until they died. It was so annoying. And as a tank, sometimes I didn't see them. They'd just be pecking people in the back. I don't know what the hell's going on. I freaking hated those seagulls.
Could completely avoid engaging the seagulls. These mobs flew around in areas where players might accidentally aggro them.
It was always an
during
accidental
fights with
thing.
other mobs. It was never intentional. Fighting them wasted valuable time, and if someone happened to aggro a seagull during a boss fight, players could be blinded by their ability for 2 seconds. While this effect was brief, it could have serious consequences during tough encounters.
Yeah, you're doing the boss fight and then your healer gets blinded. Yeah, you're not getting healed. Okay, everyone's dead now.
Often turning the tide against the group at critical moments.
Worst.
Not to mention, these mobs simply wasted extra time and offered no useful rewards, making their presence all the more frustrating. The seagulls quickly became a true villain of Eye of Ashara. They were the subject of countless memes, their power humorously compared to the leaders of the Burning Legion, and they sparked widespread uproar on forums throughout the entire
you gotta love
Legion
the WoW
expansion.
community.
In short, even an inconspicuous neutral enemy can really get under players' skin and leave a lasting negative impression.
Makes sense. Yeah, great video. I love these. I've been loving these Nico War videos, man. They're so good. Yeah, love looking back at this stuff. So nostalgic. And some of these mobs decimated player bases, man. That's freaking funny. Nice video from Necro War.